So with the NBA draft month here, obviously the draft is looming, and one of the big kind of honors, I guess, is what you would call it, is having the ability to be invited to the NBA draft green room, where you obviously sit on the whatever floor, the draft room floor it is, but typically being invited to the NBA draft green room is a signal on kind of where you are at, as far as where NBA teams see you. And actually, shout out to you, Dion, because I did not know this, but the process of deciding who's invited to the NBA Combine draft actually involves communication from the presidents and the general managers of the teams that pick throughout the first round. So teams are asked to vote on the top 25 players whose names they expect to hear called first. And this is try to ensure that players aren't sitting very long in front of a national audience because you and I can both think back to that, any time in every sport, those certain players that find themselves in the green room solo dolo by themselves, Will Smith style in the empty living room in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. And you never want to see players go through that. So there was a first round of invites that went out. It included, the normal people who you think, Flag, Dylan Harper, Bailey, Edgecombe, Trey Johnson, Man, Jeremiah Fears, just to name a few, with some others. There were two names that were missing from this list. Now, with that said, they are sending these out in waves. So there is going to be another 11 invitations that are expected to be sent out. And they actually might send those out in waves. So I don't know. Gamoni and them might throw those out 2v2, 2-on-2 every single day. But Jase Richardson and Will Riley were not currently invited. Now that might change. If it does change, we will talk about that. But like you spoke to on Dion, or I'll give you the floor in a second here. Is this a sign that teams don't look at those players as highly as maybe? I mean, obviously some of the other players on this list, because you see some other players like Carter Bryant's on this list, Asa Newell's on this list. I've seen those guys be anywhere from like early lottery, late lottery to not lottery. So I guess what do you take from Jason, Will Riley not being on the first batch? I guess.
I think I take more from Jace. I think if you tell me Will Riley wasn't one of the 13 that was invited originally, I think that probably makes sense. I mean Carter Bryant being invited instead of Will Riley, I think, but that in mind, like NBA teams would are probably infatuated by like the idea of Carter Bryant, right? Like Carter Bryant's like the perfect NBA, like you're kind of a four, you're kind of a three, you're kind of a two, you're kind of a five, but you're actually none of the above. And NBA teams fall in love with prospects like that, so it's probably not that surprising either. Um, what I think it means is less about their high end stock. I think Jase Richardson's high end stock is still top 10. What I think it says more is where their floor is. So I think Carter Bryant might not necessarily be like a lottery pick. He might be, but I think he might not necessarily be a lottery pick. But I think there's some team that told Carter Bryant in the top 20, hey, we're picking you. And based upon that, the NBA was like, give him an invite because we know that he will be picked in the top 20. What I think it says is Jace probably doesn't have a first round guarantee. Now, he might have some team that takes him in the top 10, and that team that does, if they choose not to take him in the top 10, might try to trade back at the late first round. But I think it kind of says there's a bit of a pendulum on Jase Richardson in terms of where he might go. Um, which isn't super shocking for Will Riley. I feel like Will Riley is one of the more polarizing prospects in this draft. Like he could go lotto, he could go second round, um, and no one really knows. And I think one of the factors that does play a massive role into this too is what these luxury tax second apron teams do. Do they keep their pick and take an international prospect who's actually not going to play to save financial flexibility for free agency, or do they trade the pick, or do they take the pick hoping to get a cheap rotational piece? Like there's so many questions going into this draft because it's one of the first drafts with the new CBA fully in place that I think you could see a Jace Richardson go top 10 and you could see him go like in the second round. And that's probably why he wasn't on this first wave of invites is there's no real guarantee for him of where he's going to be picked.
This video is brought to you by NBA2K Lab.com. 2K Lab worked with us last summer as well. They're one of our favorite entities in all of sports gaming. We want to show you their college basketball stadium locator challenge game. And I'm going to share a screen right now as we do this. South Carolina, bang. Oh,
Ooh,
okay, that's pretty good. Next, North Carolina. Why are we only getting the Carolinas?
please
Bang.
lock in.
St. John's, that's New
New
York.
York.
Bang.
Where's New Jersey?
We're on fire. Colorado. I actually don't know what state Colorado is.
It's It's in Colorado. There's a state of
Is that
Colorado.
this one?
It's to the right of Phoenix.
Anyway, you get the picture. This game's really fun. They've got more games as well, like Guess the NBA Player, Mystery Fantasy Draft, and more. Stay tuned for all of the college football content and games that they'll be putting together to help you get the best experience out of college football 26. Back to the video.
Yeah, and obviously, there's a lot of stuff surrounding Jase Richardson and his measurables and how that affects his draft stock. And look, I've seen him in a lot of places, right? I've seen him for anywhere from 14 to honestly like 24. Like there's such a wide range for him. And I guess I'll ask this. If if I had to get a yes or no from you, do you think he will be invited?
Yes, I think he gets
You
invited.
you hesitated though.
I hesitate because I really do think there's something to him potentially not going first round. And I think if there was one lottery prospect I could point to and say this guy could fall and fall for a while, I do think it's Jace. And I don't think it's Jace's fault, by the way. Like I think Jace is a like lock first round prospect talent wise. There's so many question marks with this new CBA, and there's so many question marks about how teams are going to handle the financial and the cap situations that they're in. Like the Boston Celtics literally might have to forfeit first round picks for the next like year or two if they don't get underneath that second apron, right?
Mhm.
What are they going to do? Are they going to draft Jase Richardson and then they have to trade somebody to get under the second apron? Are they going to take an international prospect that like takes a pick away from Jace? Are they going to trade the pick? Um, I think with all those question marks, like if he were to fall to 24, like you mentioned, right? That could be a situation where it's like, okay, he got to 24. Yes, that's a no-brainer. He should be picked at 24. No one might be looking to pick Jase Richardson at 24 because they might be looking to save cap money or they might be looking for a different position. I just think there's so many question marks that could go into it. If he makes it to the 20s, I think it's kind of like roulette. Who knows what's going to happen?
Yeah, and look, I think we'll be pretty locked in on obviously this next wave of invites that comes out. I think Jace is going to be in there. I do, and you know, if he, I understand there might be some slipping given like his physical stature and his measurables, but I just think the kid was too good and too productive for him to slip that far. If he slips to the second round, I'll eat a shoe, a
Well, okay.
nasty shoe too.
First off, holding you to that on the draft show, holding you to that. Second off, if he makes it to the 20s, is there any possibility he purposely tells teams not to pick him so he can fall to the second round?
So how much do you think that actually happens? You think that
I
happens
think
a
it
good amount?
I think it happens more than we realize.
Mm.
Because Trace Jackson Davis admitted to doing it. Austin Reeves admitted to doing it. And by the way, Trace might have admitted that a year too early because he ended up not playing, but he was feeling himself when in his rookie year. I think it happens more than we think because players this day and age, you don't get a lot of time in the league to prove yourself. So you're trying to pick and choose a spot where you get that opportunity more often than not.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? And this video might end up being those ones where people come back to us like, y'all just should have waited for the other ones to come out. And to that, I say, shut up. When the next wave comes out, we will comment on that. But I expect to see Jase Richardson on there, and I guess we'll end it with this. So we didn't really talk about it much. I'm sorry this became like a Jase Richardson thing, but Will Riley worthy of an invite? I don't see him getting out of the first round.
I think Will Riley's floor is higher than Jace's, but I think his ceiling is much lower. And I think because of his ceiling being lower, that's why he wasn't in the first wave. But I do think he'll be in that second wave.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because obviously you don't want a situation where these kids have to sit around in the green room. Maybe these kids deny their offer to the green room, to be honest with you. Maybe they just want the vibes back at their own little camp thing. But like I said, we'll have all the updates once those next wave of invites come out, and hopefully we see Jase Richardson and Will Riley's name on there.